The silent observer. Commander Xalek's antennae twitched nervously as he surveyed the briefing room. The chamber buzzed with conversation. Dozens of species from across the Galactic Alliance discussing strategy, making last-minute equipment checks, and engaging in the peculiar rituals every soldier performs before battle. Some prayed, others checked weapons for the 10th time. Many found comfort in conversation. Nervous energy filled the air like static before a storm. But his compound eyes kept returning to one figure. The human sat perfectly still at the far end of the tactical table, her posture relaxed yet alert. Lieutenant Maya Chen. Unlike her typically gregarious human counterparts, she hadn't spoken a single word during the entire 3-hour briefing. While other Alliance members debated approach vectors and contingency plans, she simply absorbed information with unsettling calmness. No questions, no suggestions, no movement beyond the occasional blink. Lieutenant Chen. Xalek clicked, his translator rendering his chidinous language into standard Galactic. You've been unusually quiet. Any concerns about the assault plan? The room fell silent. 53 representatives from 19 different species turned toward the lone human. Chen raised her eyes slowly, meeting Xalek's gaze with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. Humans were notoriously difficult to read, their flat faces lacking the natural signaling appendages most sentient species evolved with. "The plan is sound, Commander," she replied, her voice soft yet somehow carrying to every corner of the room. "Though the Scorvians have proven adaptive in the past." That was it. No elaboration, no alternative proposals. Just a simple acknowledgement with a hint of something. Warning? Resignation? Xalek couldn't tell. Admiral Vrelk, a towering Mortheri whose azure skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns of anxiety, leaned forward. "Perhaps humans have reservations about our strategy. Your species is still relatively new to the Alliance. If there's wisdom you wish to share." "I have nothing to add at this time," Chen interrupted, her tone remaining neutral. "The Scorvian fortress on Hephaestus VI is heavily fortified. Casualties are expected. I'm prepared." Several officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Xalek had fought alongside humans for over a decade, but something about this one felt different. Most humans he'd encountered were emotional, expressive, sometimes recklessly brave, but always communicative. This one seemed contained, like a weapon primed but not yet triggered. "Very well," Xalek said, trying to dismiss his unease. "Final preparations complete. All ships launch in 3 standard hours." Dismissed. The assembly dispersed, soldiers and officers filing out in clusters, voices rising again as conversation resumed. Chen remained seated until the room had nearly emptied, then rose smoothly and walked toward the exit alone. "Lieutenant," Xalek called, moving to intercept her. A moment. She stopped, turning to face him with that same inscrutable expression. "I've commanded joint operations with humans before," he said, lowering his voice. "Usually your kind has much to say. Questions, jokes, even complaints. Your silence is concerning." Chen's eyes, dark brown, almost black, studied him with quiet intensity. "Commander, you've read my file." "Of course. Transfer from Earth Fleet Command. Tactical Specialist. 3 commendations for exemplary service." A slight movement at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile. "That's the official file." Xalek's exoskeleton tightened involuntarily. "There's more." "There always is." She glanced at the tactical display still hovering above the table, showing the massive Scorvian fortress they would assault in mere hours. "I was quiet because sometimes there's nothing worth saying when words won't change the outcome." Before Xalek could respond, she had slipped past him and disappeared into the corridor, leaving him with an unshakable feeling that something critical had been left unsaid. The battle began exactly as planned, which should have been the first warning. The Alliance fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Hephaestus system, a perfect synchronized arrival of 73 warships representing the combined might of the Galactic Alliance. Immediately, they launched fighter screens and began advancing toward the seventh planet, a barren, volcanic world whose strategic importance stemmed from its position at the intersection of three major trade routes. The Scorgian response was immediate but measured, exactly as intelligence had predicted. Defensive platforms activated, patrol ships moved to intercept, but nothing unexpected appeared on scans. Commander Galactic stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable Clarity, his carapace glistening under the blue emergency lighting. All ships maintain formation. Ground assault teams prepare for deployment on my mark. Tactical Officer Nrelan, a delicate virgin whose translucent skin betrayed the rapid circulation of her anxiety, looked up from her console. Commander, Lieutenant Chen's shuttle has broken formation. What? Galactic snapped, mandibles clicking sharply. On screen. The main display shifted to show a small assault shuttle veering away from the main invasion force, dropping into a steep descent toward the dark side of the planet. Get her back in formation immediately. Override her controls if necessary. Unable, sir. She's locked out all remote access and isn't responding to communications. Galactic felt a cold dread settling in his thorax. Track her trajectory. Where is she heading? Calculating. Nrelan's fingers danced across the holographic interface. It appears she's on an intercept course with... That can't be right. She's heading directly toward the main Scorgian thermal vents. A sudden flash lit up the tactical display as the first wave of Alliance ships came within range of the Scorgian defense grid. Expected. Planned for. But then another flash, larger than the first, followed by another. Multiple detonations in our forward line, shouted the sensor officer. The Scorgians have deployed some kind of new mine technology. They're cloaked until proximity triggers. Galactic watched in horror as the carefully orchestrated assault dissolved into chaos. The minefield hadn't appeared on any reconnaissance. It shouldn't have been possible to hide such extensive defenses from their scans. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Pull back to safe distance and regroup. He turned to his communications officer. What's the status of Lieutenant Chen's shuttle? Still descending, sir. She's going to crash directly into the thermal vent system. The bridge fell silent as they processed this information. The vents were massive fissures in the planet's crust, spewing superheated gases and magma. A natural defensive barrier the Scorvians had built their fortress around specifically because it was impassable. She'll be incinerated, someone whispered. But as they watched, the tiny blip that represented Chen's shuttle disappeared from their sensors, not in an explosion, but simply vanished as if it had never existed. Did she crash? Was she shot down? Galactic demanded. Nrelan's voice was barely audible. Unknown, sir. No debris signature. No emergency beacon. She's gone. A thunderous impact rocked the Indomitable Clarity, throwing officers from their stations. The lights flickered, and damage reports began flooding in from all decks. Direct hit to our primary weapons array, the damage control officer reported. Scorgian battlecruisers advancing on our position. Galactic struggled to process what was happening. The intelligence had been perfect, too perfect. They had been led into a trap, and now his fleet was paying the price. But something about Chen's actions nagged at him. Her silence during the briefing. Her cryptic comments afterward. Her suicide run toward the thermal vents. All ships, fall back to position Delta, he ordered. Regroup and prepare for a second approach. Sir, Nrelan interrupted, her voice trembling. We're receiving an encrypted transmission from inside the Scorgian fortress. Source. It's Lieutenant Chen, sir. The message was brief, text only. Proceed with assault in exactly 47 minutes. Target these coordinates. Attached was a set of coordinates deep within the Scorgian defensive perimeter. How is this possible? Admiral Vrok demanded, his bioluminescence flashing chaotically. No one could survive entry through those thermal vents, let alone infiltrate the fortress. Galactic stared at the message, suddenly understanding what had bothered him about Chen from the beginning. She knew, he said quietly. She knew about the trap. That's why she was so quiet during the briefing. Then why didn't she warn us? Vrok demanded. Because she had a different plan all along, Zalek realized. Computer, access Lieutenant Chen's complete military record. Override classification. Command authority, Zeta 9. The computer responded immediately. Access denied. Human special directive files restricted to Omega-level clearance. The bridge fell silent again. Omega-level clearance was reserved for information so sensitive that fewer than 20 individuals in the entire Alliance had access. Sir, Vreeland said, breaking the silence. Multiple thermal signatures appearing within the Scorgian fortress. Internal explosions detected. Their defensive grid is experiencing power fluctuations. Zalek's compound eyes fixed on the tactical display, watching as sections of the supposedly impenetrable Scorgian defenses began to fail one after another. She's not a tactical specialist, he whispered, understanding dawning. She's something else entirely. Around him, the bridge crew watched in stunned silence as a single human, one they had all ignored and dismissed, systematically began dismantling the most fortified enemy stronghold in the sector from within. The first red flag had been her silence. The second would be the sound of the Scorvian Empire beginning to fall. The weapon unleashed. Admiral Vrok paced the length of the emergency command center, his azure skin pulsing with patterns of agitation. 47 minutes, she said. It's been 42. His massive three-fingered hand gestured toward the tactical display where the Scorvian fortress still loomed, damaged but operational. We're staking the fate of the entire fleet on the actions of one human. Commander Zalek remained motionless, his compound eyes fixed on the countdown timer. 5 minutes remaining, Admiral. The assault had turned into a disaster. 12 Alliance vessels destroyed, 17 more severely damaged. The Scorvian trap had been meticulous. A web of cloaked mines, concealed weapon platforms, and electronic countermeasures that had rendered half their tactical systems useless. Only a hasty retreat had prevented total annihilation. And yet, here they were, preparing to re-engage based solely on a cryptic message from a human who had apparently survived the impossible. Commander, the communications officer called. Incoming transmission from the Terran High Command. Priority Alpha. Zalek exchanged glances with Vrok. On screen, the holographic display flickered, and a stern-faced human female appeared. Her uniform bore no insignia except for a simple black triangle on the collar. This is Director Keller, Terran Special Operations Division. I understand you're working with one of our assets. Vrok stepped forward. If by asset you mean Lieutenant Chen, then yes. Though working with implies a level of cooperation we haven't experienced. She abandoned formation, disobeyed direct orders, and is now somehow inside the enemy fortress. Director Keller's expression remained neutral. Lieutenant Maya Chen is not her real name. She is Operative Sigma-7, a member of our Ghost Protocol Division. Her presence on your mission was not accidental. Explain, Zalek demanded, his mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. We've suspected for months that the Scorgians had infiltrated Alliance intelligence. Keller continued. Your mission plans were compromised from the beginning. We couldn't warn you directly without alerting the mole, so we inserted Sigma-7. You knew it was a trap and said nothing. Vrok's bioluminescence flared with anger. We sent our best operative, Keller replied coolly. That's not nothing. Sigma-7 is specifically enhanced for deep infiltration and autonomous operation. Her mission was to allow the trap to be sprung, then exploit the Scorvians' momentary confidence to penetrate their defenses. Zalek's exoskeleton tightened. Enhanced. What exactly is she? Director Keller's eyes narrowed slightly. That's classified beyond your clearance, Commander. But I'll tell you this much. She's the reason we recommend you follow her instructions precisely. The window of opportunity she creates will be narrow. The transmission abruptly ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. 3 minutes remaining. The tactical officer announced. Admiral Vrelk turned to Xalek. "Your assessment, Commander." Xalek remembered Chen's stillness, her quiet confidence, the way she had accepted the flawed plan without comment, knowing all along what would happen. "We proceed as instructed. All ships, prepare to advance on my mark, targeting the coordinates provided by Lieutenant, by Operative Sigma-7. And if it's another trap?" Vrelk asked quietly. "Then we die," Xalek replied simply. "But I don't believe it is." Deep within the Scorvian fortress, Maya moved like a shadow through the maintenance ducts. Her body temperature had been biochemically reduced to match the ambient environment, rendering her nearly invisible to thermal scanners. The specialized combat suit she wore beneath her standard Alliance uniform absorbed sound and disrupted electromagnetic signatures. None of this technology was shared with the Alliance. Humanity had learned early that keeping certain advantages secret was essential for survival in a galaxy where they were physically outmatched by nearly every other sentient species. Maya checked her neural implants countdown. 1 minute remaining. The fortress's central reactor control room lay just ahead, guarded by 6 Scorgian warriors. Their chitinous exoskeletons could stop most conventional weapons, and their multiple limbs allowed them to wield several weapons simultaneously. Against anyone else, they would be formidable opponents. Maya removed a small device from her belt and released it into the ventilation system. 30 seconds later, the guards began to sway, their movements becoming erratic as the neurological agent affected their coordination centers. She dropped silently from the ceiling vent, landing behind the disoriented guards. What followed wasn't combat so much as execution. Precise strikes to vulnerable nerve clusters that her enhanced vision could perceive beneath the Scorvian's armor. 6 opponents, 6 seconds, 6 bodies on the floor. The reactor control room was now unguarded. Maya pressed her palm against the security scanner and injected a specialized virus through microscopic needle arrays in her fingertips. The door slid open. Inside, Scorgian technicians turned in surprise as she entered. None lived long enough to sound an alarm. Maya approached the central control terminal and connected her neural implant directly to the system. The specialized AI that shared her consciousness began dismantling security protocols and overriding safety systems, all while Maya kept watch for reinforcements. 10 seconds to the deadline. She found what she was looking for: the fortress's main shield generator controls. With precise virtual manipulations, she created a localized failure in the defensive screen, precisely at the coordinates she had transmitted to the Alliance fleet. 5 seconds. Maya disconnected from the terminal and moved to a secure position behind reinforced coolant tanks. 0. Mark. Xalek commanded. The remaining Alliance warships surged forward, accelerating toward the Scorgian fortress with weapons charge. They expected resistance, the concentrated fire of defense platforms, interceptor squadrons, perhaps even the dreaded phase cannons that had shredded their first assault wave. Instead, their sensors detected a sudden fluctuation in the fortress's shields, a perfect circle of vulnerability exactly where Chen had indicated. "All ships, focus fire on the target coordinates," Xalek ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline analog flooding his system. Maximum yield. 70 energy beams converged on a single point in the Scorgian defenses. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a crack spreading through ice, the shield collapse expanded outward from the impact point. The fortress's external defenses began failing in cascade. "Secondary explosions detected throughout the facility," reported the tactical officer. "Their power grid is destabilizing." Xalek leaned forward, mandibles twitching in disbelief. What did she do in there? As if in answer, new information appeared on their tactical displays. Complete schematics of the fortress interior, defense system layouts, troop positions, and command protocols, all streaming directly from the Scorvian central database. "She's given us everything," Admiral Vrelk whispered, his bioluminescence shifting to patterns of awe. "Complete access to their systems." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, We're receiving a transmission from inside the fortress. Maya's face appeared on the main screen. Blood, both red human and greenish Scorvian, spattered her features. Behind her, fires raged and alarms blared. "Commander Xalek," she said, her voice eerily calm amidst the chaos. "The fortress's self-destruct sequence has been initiated. You have 18 minutes to extract any personnel you value and retreat to safe distance." "What about you?" Xalek asked. The hint of a smile touched her lips. "I still have work to do. The Scorvian High Command is attempting to evacuate through a hidden facility beneath the main fortress. I'm going to ensure they don't succeed." "That's a suicide mission," Admiral Vrelk interjected. "The entire planet will become unstable when that reactor goes critical." "Probably," Maya acknowledged. "But their leadership knows who betrayed them. They have the identity of your mole. I can't allow them to escape with that information." Understanding dawned on Xalek. "You never planned to survive this mission." "Survival was classified as a secondary objective," she replied matter-of-factly. "Mission success was primary." "We can send extraction teams," Xalek began. "Negative, Commander. There's no time, and I work better alone." Her expression softened slightly. "This is what I was made for." The transmission cut abruptly as an explosion rocked the chamber behind her. Admiral Vrelk stared at the blank screen, his skin now a pale, subdued blue. "Made for," he repeated quietly. Xalek turned to the tactical display, where the fortress was now clearly in its death throes. "All ships, begin immediate withdrawal. Prepare to jump to safe distance on my mark." His voice was steady, professional, betraying none of the turmoil he felt. As the Alliance fleet disengaged, pulling away from the doomed fortress, Xalek kept his eyes on the small blip that represented Maya's position deep within the crumbling structure. It continued to move purposefully toward the hidden evacuation site, never hesitating, never deviating. "Commander," Mrelan said softly beside him, "what exactly are humans?" Xalek watched as Maya's signal descended into levels of the fortress that their sensors could barely penetrate. "I don't think we've been asking the right question, tactical officer. The question isn't what humans are." The signal disappeared entirely as it passed beyond their sensor range. "The question is what humans are willing to become." 17 minutes later, the Scorvian fortress erupted in a cataclysmic explosion that tore a wound in the planet's crust 20 kilometers wide. The shockwave rippled outward, destabilizing volcanic systems across the hemisphere. Within hours, Hephaestus VI would be uninhabitable. As the Alliance fleet regrouped at the edge of the system, reports confirmed the complete destruction of the Scorvian leadership cadre. No escape vessels had been detected leaving the surface. Commander Xalek stood alone in his private quarters, staring at the classified file that Director Keller had finally authorized him to access. The Ghost Protocol. Humans who had volunteered to become something more, or perhaps something less, than human. Bioengineered, cybernetically enhanced, neurologically reconfigured, weapons disguised as people. And yet, in Maya's, in Operative Sigma-7's, final moments, he had glimpsed something unmistakably, profoundly human in her eyes. Not resignation or fear, but determination. Purpose. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. "Commander," came Mrelan's voice over the intercom, "we're receiving a transmission. It's using Lieutenant Chen's personal identification code." Xalek's head snapped up. "Source: unknown, sir. The signal appears to be bouncing through multiple relays. Put it through to my quarters. Privacy Protocol Alpha." The message was text only, just 3 lines. "Mission complete. Mole identified. Admiral Kresh of Centauri Fleet Command. Data package attached with evidence. Sometimes silence is necessary when surrounded by listening ears." Xalek stared at the message, his compound eyes widening. There was no signature, no further explanation. But it could only mean one thing. Against all odds, Maya had survived. As he downloaded the attached data package, encrypted intelligence that would undoubtedly lead to the highest-profile espionage arrest in Alliance history. Zelek found himself remembering her stillness in that briefing room, the quiet human that everyone had ignored, the weapon hidden in plain sight. He drafted a brief response. "Understood, Lieutenant. Your silence speaks volumes." But before sending it, he hesitated, then deleted the message entirely. Whatever Maya Chen truly was, officer, operative, weapon, she had chosen to disappear back into the shadows. Perhaps that was where she belonged. Perhaps that was where humanity's true strength lay, not in the thunder of their warships or the brilliance of their technology, but in their capacity to become whatever the situation demanded, even if it meant becoming the silence before the storm.